Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown. A three. Steps back, crossover, puts up a three. Rebound James. Second. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Good evening, Cleveland, and welcome to a fun installment of the Block the Shot to Stop, our Bluewire podcast that covers the one, the only, number one seed in the Eastern Conference, Cleveland Cavaliers. I am Tim Daniel. I'm very excited for tonight's shows. We're doing a nice, fun Bluewire crossover. Joining me, as always, Kevin Lynch. And Kevin, our guest tonight is from the Setting the Pace podcast here on Bluewire Pods as well, talking about the Indiana Pacers, the Cavaliers' opponent for the next two games. By the way, weirdest scheduling of all time that four times the Cavs and Pacers play are two back-to-backs ish. Joining us tonight, you can check him out on X, a really fun follow there at Alex Golden NBA. This is Alex Golden. How are you, man?
Hey, Tim. Hey, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad we're able to do this. And I have to ask, the Cavs only have two games left?
Three.
Yeah.
So, that's, I think, why Tim threw the ish in there. So they got the Pacers and the Knicks in between the two Pacers games.
That's right.
But it kind of
in between. It's so weird.
Yeah, it definitely stinks that they are playing these kind of, three of the top four teams in the East are playing meaningless games at the very end of the year. Kind of, I don't know what you could have done to avoid it, but just kind of makes the end of the season fall flat.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that everybody probably at the beginning of the season would have thought, oh, maybe the Cavs and the Pacers will be battling it out for like 3, 4, or 5 or something like that. Nobody thought Cleveland would be, so I think do you guys still have a chance to win the overall record in the NBA?
I think it's done now. I think
OKC's got too big of a lead. It's like they've lost like 13 games.
Yeah, so. They have a 2-game lead with 3 to play. So, and I don't know who has the tiebreaker. So, for all intents and purposes, it's over.
Yeah.
And the Cavs already announced that like no one's playing.
I saw that. Yeah, stay healthy, right? That's the most important thing, right?
Yeah. So Alex, you and I set this up a couple of months ago, thinking these games might, matter a little bit more than they do, but we still want to talk to you, and we'll talk about kind of, a little bit of the matchups in the next few games that we do expect both teams to rest some guys and everything. But we want to talk a lot about, how when they're at full strength, this Pacers and Cavs team match up in case there is a highly likelihood of them playing the second round. But let's start with this. Like, how are you feeling as somebody who covers the Pacers probably as intricately as just about anyone? Like, how do you feel about the season now that it's virtually over with the Pacers?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you were a Pacer fan, the first 25 games were really rough. Tyrese Haliburton did not look like himself. They were 10-25. They were in the play-in. We were thinking maybe if this team can get a 6 seed, we'd consider that a successful season. But then, post December 15th, right around that time when the in-season tournament was going on, the Pacers started to get some guys healthy, Andrew Nembhard specifically, and they were able to kind of turn their season around. And I believe since the month of January, they have like one of the top 4 records in the NBA. And so the fact that they are 2 wins away from reaching 50 wins, I think it's got to make you feel really, happy if you're a Pacer fan for the way this team's kind of turned things around. Tyrese Haliburton has looked like a totally different player, like an all-NBA level player since since All-Star break, because he needed some rest. He's just been going nonstop from last offseason playing in with Team USA and then playing again in this offseason with Team USA. Like, it was just basically 2 years of nonstop. So I just think that they were able to figure that out, get him some rest, and they're playing really good basketball right now, getting everybody healthy, and their defense has been the key for why they've had this turnaround. They are 11th the last time I checked in defense since January 1st.
Oh, nice. I do want to say loosely Haliburton played in the Olympics this past year. He was
traveling.
Yeah, see,
he's got a medal.
He's traveling all summer, right?
Group project, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and you kind of half answered it, but I want to dig into it. Like, Haliburton, frankly, he's been an all-NBA player a couple of years, and like, was it tired? Was it injured that like you said he looked so far away from himself, the first half of the year, really. And then this second half of the year, he's probably looked about as good as he ever has. And honestly, the more limited time I watched the Pacers, was it just rest? Was there an injury there? Was there something going on with his game? What do you think?
I think it's a little combination of everything because Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard both got hurt early in the beginning of the season. And so when you lose your top two perimeter defenders, that really alleviates some of the pressure off of him. It just totally changes the game. And Andrew Nembhard is such a the Pacers love to play this pace and space type offense, and they love having two ball handlers on the floor all the time. But without Andrew Nembhard, they're not playing a lot of McConnell Halliburton lineups together. So it was Mathurin, and then even there at the time, they were trying to find that fifth starter with Mathurin, Siakam, Turner, and Halliburton, and they were going to Quentin Jackson, the guy on a two-way contract for a handful of games because he was playing, the best role next to Tyrese, who is, he's a point guard that's done very well in the G League, but he's a G League player for a reason. He's not a regular rotational guy for a playoff. So love his energy, but Tyrese was just really getting a lot of pressure, a lot of double teams and things like that. And you could just tell like teams were taking him out of the game. Like if you go back, and I think Andrew Nembhard actually came back for like the first quarter or first half of the game they played in Memphis. Jalen Wells was face guarding him at a half court. Like that's the kind of attention he was getting. And so I think the Pacers had to find a way to kind of get him through that. So I think a lot of it was that, but also mentally. He just didn't seem like he was himself. And I think part of it was because of the on-court production. But he talked to the media multiple times and just said he looked back and saw the way that he was kind of talking in videos with guys in the locker room, things like that. And he didn't look like he had any joy. And he said he had to find that joy again. And so the fact that he's found that joy, he's playing well, shooting the ball well, and, getting everybody healthy again has really just alleviated some of that pressure. But, Pascal Siakam was the guy that kind of carried this team the first half of the season. That's why he was the all-star. And now it feels like post-all-star break, Tyrese is kind of, taking the baton and he's trying to finish it out for Indiana.
We're a little bitter still about that Pascal Siakam all-star because we felt Jared Allen really
I'm not bitter. You might be bitter, but
no, I'm kidding. Pascal Siakam 100% deserves to be an all-star.
Yeah.
He for sure did. He was great. I got lucky to see in January. I was at the Cavs Pacers game in Indy. I'm in Cincinnati, so it's a pretty painless drive for me. And watching the two teams play together, so it was a back-to-back. Indiana goes and wins in Cleveland that Sunday. Cleveland goes to Indy, wins that Tuesday, and it's one of those games where Mitchell plays really well. So far in the two games that they've played, there's obviously a 1-1. Those games probably meant a little more, like Kevin kind of mentioned. But what was kind of your biggest takeaway from the first two Cavs Pacers matchups in the regular season?
Yeah, the first game was so weird because the Cavs were up 13 at the half. Tyrese gets hurt, doesn't come back in the second half, and they start Ben Shepherd, and they start doing this full court press thing, and all of a sudden the Pacers just start hitting everything, and their defense really just kind of got the Cavs a little bit uncomfortable. And I was kind of surprised to see the Cavs play that way. But we knew, like every Pacer fan knew, that the Cavs are coming for them, a little bit of revenge here in that game on TNT. And Donovan Mitchell was on a heater. And I think that he's just one of those guys, like when he's got it going, he might be like a top 5, top 10 scorer in the league when he's just in that zone, right? He's really hard to stop. And I think over time, like we've seen where Turner's had some decent games, but I feel like Jared Allen has been a problem for Miles Turner because he's so long and physical. And Miles is more of a finesse player. And so if Miles isn't hitting from outside, how is he going to impact what Jairus is doing? And I thought that the Cavs did a very good job defensively on just trying to figure things out there with that group. But I'm trying to remember if there's anybody out in that game. I do believe Ben Mathurin got ejected.
Yes.
In that Cavs game. He got really upset about a no call. Ended up, I think, bumping the official. She ejected him. Then he got suspended a game for it. So, I mean, lost his head a little bit there. The things just weren't going right for the Pacers. They had like these little fake runs where they'd almost come back and do it. But I think Cleveland just overwhelmed them there. And I thought it was really interesting because Coach Kenny was talking about stuff in the pregame, and he was like, I love how Rick talked about how the Pacers played with force. And he said, I'm going to steal that word now. I want our guys to play with more force. So I don't know if he's been saying that more recently. Talking about playing with force and just how the Cavs needed to bring that force to the game, and I thought they did. So to me, I felt like it was a good, sample of what we could expect maybe for the future. But the one thing I will say, I know the Cavs did not have Ty Jerome in either of those games. So he's been a difference maker for the Cavs off the bench. And it's just like, how do you really know what to expect if you don't see him against your team?
We are the de facto #1 Ty Jerome podcast.
And Isaac Okoro. Ty Jerome and Isaac Okoro.
The first time, it was one of our first like it was in the first couple of weeks of the season. First time we went like, mini viral online was we had a competition to give Ty Jerome a nickname because there's no like noted nickname of him anywhere. And we named him our beloved TJ Maxx. So, you kind of were starting to like lead into the question I wanted to ask you, Alex, and that's like, because we're a Cavs podcast, like from what you have seen of the Cavs this year, not just the Pacers games, but I'm sure you've kind of like turned them on every now and again, seen highlights. Like, what are your impressions? Because like you, I predicted they'd be a 3 seed coming into the year, and they obviously kind of took the NBA by storm right out of the gates. Faltered a little bit towards the end of the season, but they're going to be wire to wire, leading the Eastern Conference. Like, what's kind of your impression of the Cavs?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big Evan Mobley fan since he was drafted. And, I don't know if you guys saw my tweet, but Kendrick Perkins was saying, I got Draymond Green for Defensive Player of the Year. I said, Y stands for year, right? Like, it can't just be the Defensive Player of the month, right?
I traded for Jimmy Butler. Yeah.
I mean, Draymond Green's a good defender. We know that. But, like, if anybody was going to win this year, if everybody's healthy, it was Victor Wembanyama. Like, there's no doubt about it. Of course. Who's out? Who's next? I think it's got to be Evan Mobley. He's been so disruptive defensively. I think he's really blossomed under Coach Atkinson, and I think you can kind of just see how he's slowly just blossoming into this, long-term all-star, right? People always kind of sleep on Darius Garland, I feel like. Smaller guard, but man, he can do some really good things offensively, and he's gotten better. I just think that you can never overlook him. This is just a really deep Cavs team. The only concern I will say that I have is I know a lot of people love the trade they made for DeAndre Hunter, but the way that Georges Niang and Karis LeVert kind of brought some of that energy off the bench, at times I just wonder, was it the right move? Was it a good move? Because I think LeVert and Niang have played really well in Atlanta, and maybe it's just because they always play well against the Pacers. I'm a little bit biased, but it felt like LeVert and Niang just like torched the Pacers every time, where DeAndre Hunter hasn't felt as impactful when he's played against the Pacers when he was on the Hawks. So I'm curious that dynamic. I think he's still coming off the bench, right? Yeah, which it's just interesting. You trade 2 bench guys for another bench guy. Like, how much of a difference is it? And I get worried about guys that were really struggling as a starter, come off the bench, have a really good season, and all of a sudden they get traded at the trade deadline. Like, how good are they actually going to be? But I think that aside from that, Max Strus is a very, battle-tested playoff guy. He's going to be a problem. Their depth is obviously a big strength of theirs as well. So, I think that the Cavs are going to be a problem. I mean, I would not pick the Pacers in the Cavs-Pacers series if it ever got to that, right? I'd be silly to do that just because of how well the Cavs have played this year. But if I look at Boston and Cleveland, I think I would rather play Cleveland just because they don't have that proven championship roster that we saw last year.
Tristan Thompson's on the roster.
Former Pacer, by the way. Don't forget.
Yeah, former Pacer, former Bull.
Yeah. We actually just did a segment on DeAndre Hunter, so I don't want to go super into it, but the gist of it was like, is he more one-dimensional than we thought he was, or than he was when he first came to the Cavs? You could tell he was making an effort to like fit in, doing a lot more playmaking, cutting, maybe giving even a little bit higher effort on the defensive end, and taking like the top perimeter player on the other team. Now he's kind of settled into like a 3-point specialist and little above average defender. Which I think high-end version of that trade, it's a huge win for the Cavs. But you're right. Where it is right now, I think DeAndre Hunter brings some stuff to him. But I miss Niang, and I miss what LeVert could have been, even though he struggled with injuries for a good part of this season.
That might be round 1, so,
Yeah, could be. You might be playing the Hawks instead of the Cavs. But yeah, so how do you – okay, so we have the 2 games earlier in the year. To be honest, these couple games the next days aren't going to matter. And I'll give you my take and Tim's as well, but we'll start with you, Alex. Like, how do you see these 2 teams matching up, if they were to meet in the playoffs? And we'll just assume both teams are full strength.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really fascinating because if Okoro is starting, I think it allows Tyrese Haliburton someone to guard because Okoro is not going to really do much offensively. And so I think that does kind of alleviate some of that. So I would not be surprised if at some point, if the Pacers make it close early on in the series, if Atkinson changes it out and maybe he starts Max Strus for, Okoro, just because it makes somebody like makes it harder for Tyrese to guard because we know teams are going to hunt Tyrese and pick and roll, things like that. But I think Turner and Allen are pretty comparable. I think Siakam and Mobley's a really interesting matchup.
That's fun.
And then Andrew Nembhard versus Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland versus Aaron Nesmith. Like, we saw the Pacers last year, like, Nembhard and Nesmith have kind of been their, like, defensive backbones. And so I think that them kind of matching up with the two guards, I think they can do it. I just, I know the speed of Garland could be problematic probably for Nesmith at times. So I would assume you probably see more Nembhard on him and maybe Nesmith on Mitchell to kind of give him more of a physical defender. And so I kind of like how they match up that way just because I think they're very comparable. But I do know that the Pacers at times have struggled with zone, like the Bucks zone and the Bucks size gave them a lot of problems. So I'll be interested to see if the Cavs want to play a little bit bigger. But if the Pacers can run and play and that faster pace and get the ball moved out quite a bit, I think it's going to be huge. The bench for the Pacers has been kind of like their strength, but also like it's been a weakness this year at the same time because when the bench doesn't usually play well, the team didn't play well last year. And this year it's like the starters have been pretty good, but the bench has kind of had their moments. And so Benedict Mathurin's kind of a wild card for me with the Pacers because he's the guy you can throw in there for Nesmith and or Nembhard that'll give you a lot more scoring and shooting. And when he wants to lock in defensively, he can, but we haven't really seen him in a playoff environment outside of last season's in-season tournament run where he was really good in that. So I think getting him, Obi Toppin has elevated his game the last couple of months. Pacers have played a lot of small ball 5 with Obi at the 5 because they've really struggled with the backup center. Thomas Bryant's their backup center now, and he's been hit or miss. So that's kind of that. TJ McConnell, it'll be the battle of the TJs, which I'm excited about. TJ McConnell, the two white guys having a white off here. That's in the series. I think that's going to be great. And then Jarris Walker, the second-year player out of Houston, was kind of in and out of the rotation. And then probably the last 7 games, he's been playing about an average of like 10 to 15 minutes a game. So could he kind of be a wild card for the Pacers? I think that's really interesting just because I think he's shooting close to 60% from 3 over the last 7-8 games. Like he's really shooting the ball well, gives him another element in terms of passing size, 7'3" wingspan, 6'7", 6'8". So the Pacers are pretty deep, and I know the Cavs bench is really good too. So I think that they are very comparable. It's just a matter of, I think that sounds stupid, but who gets the right floor spacing, who makes the most shots, and can the stars kind of elevate their team over the next team? Because can Halliburton and Siakam take the Pacers to another level, match at least the level that Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley are kind of taking the Cavs.
So I got to ask you this, Alex, as someone who absolutely loves basketball. I just had this general question in the sense of like, I've kind of compared the Indiana Pacers to being like basketball's version of the Milwaukee Brewers and vice versa, in the sense that, yeah, they don't have championships, but they're always extremely good. They're always really competitive. And when they do rebuild, it's always like a year and they're back to being a contender. What is it about the Pacers organization, why they are so intelligent, and why when they do kind of have these funks, like they had 2 years in a row, they picked in the top 10, and now they're battling for home court advantage in the playoffs?
It's a good question. I mean, their owner just doesn't really want to see them lose games. And I think that's been huge. They've gotten lucky on some trades. Like, let's be honest here. Paul George forces his way out. They get Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. Victor Oladipo becomes an all-star that next year. I think he's a back-to-back all-star. He has that crazy injury where he basically never returns from that injury, never is the same version of himself. Then Domantas Sabonis becomes an all-star out of that, crazy trade because the Thunder were like, you know what, we've got a lot of young talent. Let's go in there with Russ and PG and kind of build something. And then after that, they realize they can't play 2 centers in today's NBA with Turner and Sabonis. And so they make that Sabonis trade, and they dealt with the Sacramento Kings, who are notoriously bad at making trades. So I think that they've gotten, they've been very smart and strategic about the moves they're making. Like, Sabonis was not a bad player. Don't get me wrong. This is a very talented player. But they targeted Tyrese Halliburton because Rick Carlisle liked him in the draft in 2020 for the Dallas Mavericks. And he was like, this is a guy I think that we can really build our team around. And so they put a lot of pressure on Tyrese Halliburton. So the fact that they basically went from Paul George to Tyrese Halliburton and didn't really skip a beat in terms of having a franchise guy, because even Oladipo filled those shoes because he's an Indiana Hoosier, right? So a lot of local ties here, like they've just found ways to get guys that play well together. And it's been more to me about getting a collective group that plays the right style versus going out there and getting the big names. Like they didn't do a crazy Donovan Mitchell trade like the Cavs did, right? they went out there and they traded for Pascal Siakam when they didn't really have to give up too much. They gave up 2 picks in last year's draft, the 2026 pick next year, and Bruce Brown and Jordan Moore. And Jordan Moore is not even in the league anymore, and Bruce Brown's now on the tanking Pelicans. So it's just like they've made the right trades at the right time, and they've never really tied themselves down to any crazy contracts either where they're untradeable and they can't make moves. So they love the word optionality. That's Kevin Pritchard's word, the GM, or the president, I should say. And he just always talks about the optionality. And they built such a culture with Tyrese and with Rick Carlisle that basically if you don't fit this system, then, they're probably going to move on from you and try to find guys that do. But they've done a good job of targeting players that, like Obi Toppin, like Pascal Siakam, that kind of just balance out what they're trying to build here.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I was kind of thinking about like some of the matchups. So I will tell you, my dream, if the Pacers play the Cavs, not obviously I'm rooting for the Cavs and everything, but I would love Ty Jerome to annoy TJ McConnell to the point of him snapping and getting ejected from a game, just to even things out for like a decade or whatever it's been of McConnell annoying me.
Every fan base that we talk to, like talking about TJ McConnell, they're just like, he's so much better than I expected. But every fan base feels the same way because he does it to everybody, not just you guys. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah. No, I think there are some similarities between the Cavs and Pacers. I also think there are some contrasts, and I don't mean this as like a positive or negative, but I think the Cavs are very much like a skill team. They have a lot of guys who have either one specific or several like specific skills that they're, if not elite at, like well above average. But what they're not is they're not one of the most athletic teams in the league. I mean, you have Evan Mobley, you have Donovan Mitchell, but like you look at the roster up and down, the Pacers are a longer, more athletic team than the Cavs, and that would be one thing that kind of worries me because looking back, I went back and looked at the highlights of those first 2 games against Indiana, and it was like 2 completely different games, almost like different teams playing, right? One game, the Cavs got everything they wanted offensively, scored 127 points, shot like 45% from 3, and just got good look after good look and won that game by, I think, 10 or 12. The other game was like up until that point in the season, mid-January, might have been the Cavs' worst offensive game of the year. Like the Pacers absolutely locked them up. So I don't know about you, but I see this as a potential series where you kind of get that back and forth. Like you kind of almost game to game, it could look like completely different teams playing.
No, you're right. I mean, this is a Pacers team, in my personal opinion, that plays more of a system than they do, like you said with the Cavs. But the Cavs are more skilled, right? Like they can rely on just talent alone to kind of get them over the hump and get them through stretches and whatever. It's like clear out Donovan Mitchell took over a game, right? Like the Pacers don't really play that way that often. Every once in a while, they might do that with Siakam because Siakam is so good in that mid post with that little jab, and he can drive by guys because he's got the length and he's kind of quick and a little bit of a herky-jerky guy, and then also he can jab step and hit that little 18 footer even over taller defenders because he's just been doing it for so well. He's crafted it. And we saw it happen last year, but it seems like when Pascal kind of has those games where he scores like 36, 38 points, the Pacers rarely win those games because they're just better when they're more reliable. Or I guess I can't say it the right way right now for whatever reason, but when they just rely on one another to like provide points. Like if he has 22 and Halliburton has 25 and then the rest of the guys have like 15, 14, 13, around that range, like that's just the way they usually beat teams is when there's like 6, 7 guys in double figures. When it's 2 guys kind of carrying the load, they just don't usually win those games because they're trying to find mismatches, right? Like when Mitchell's on the bench, can they win those minutes, right? I mean, I just going back to the game they played against Denver because it's fresh in my mind on Sunday. Pacers didn't have Pascal Siakam. Obi Toppin started the game, and they were sending double and triple teams at Tyrese Halliburton. Like he would run a pick and roll, and there'd be 2 guys waiting for him right there. So he's having to get rid of the ball quick, and they're basically trying to like force everybody but Tyrese to beat him, which is a great strategy because there's no Siakam. The Pacers hit their shots because they were running their system. The guys were open, they were hitting them. If they weren't hitting them, then it would have been terrible. And so, they were found a way to win that game against the Nuggets before Mike Malone got fired. And it was just crazy. Like nobody expected the Pacers to win a random road game in Denver. They had 3 at home, go to Denver for 1, come back for 3 more at home. Very weird scheduling by the NBA, but just the way they were able to do that. So I just think that with the Cavs, like they're so skilled, like you cannot the Pacers cannot match the level of overall individual talent that the Cavs have. And I probably said the same thing for Boston, the same way, right? But it's their team and the way they play together. They just rely, like their whole message the last couple of years has been strength in numbers. It's not a individual takeover like we fear with Giannis with the Bucks, right? Like he can just put 50 on the board and dish out 15 assists and get 12 rebounds, and you're just like, man, this guy's unbelievable. Pacers aren't really built that way. So I think where they're similar, they are both built by strength, but I would say the Cavs have just a little bit more individual talent that could help lift them in a series.
Yeah, that's fair. And I couldn't agree more with your points. Like, I think where the NBA used to be obsessed with the big three, right? Big stars. The new NBA obsession is like roster length or roster depth and being able to get guys who can contribute, especially in this really kind of weird, difficult area of the CBA and everything. You look at a lot of the top teams in the league, both conferences, the Thunder, the Thunder, the Rockets, the Celtics, the Cavs, the Pacers all have in common. It's like roster length, depth, having 10, 11 guys that can play so that you can sit out a guy who turns an ankle and not have too much of a drop off, or, someone either can't play or isn't playing well and you can kind of rotate someone else in. I truly do think that you look at the teams that are the most top heavy, meaning like they have a couple of stars and then a lot of guys on minimum contracts. They generally aren't doing nearly as well in the NBA. I mean, Phoenix is the best example of that. I mean, they're definitely the big outlier, but I think honestly, I kind of think the Pacers and the Cavs are two of the teams, and the Thunder might be the most team that was a little bit ahead of the curve and started building a team around being able to have 10, 11, 12 guys that can contribute and not putting all of your eggs in the baskets of like 2 or 3 players.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fair. And I mean, this is not a knock either, and I hope it doesn't sound like that. But when you look at a guy like Donovan Mitchell, I don't think a lot of people would say, oh, that's an A-level superstar. This is not a guy that you would put in your top 10 in the NBA. This is a guy that I think I've heard, people debating if he should make, all NBA first team, second team, like they're debating on where to put him at. But a lot of other players too in the league have been out with injuries, but not qualified, I guess you could say, for the 65-game threshold. But I don't mean this as like a knock, because it's the same boat Tyrese Halliburton is in and Pascal and that kind of stuff. It's like, these are very good players where I think people would say, oh, they're more of like a co-star for an actual star to win a championship. And I just don't think people realize, like, the way the NBA is right now, depth could actually win you a championship. The Thunder are a little bit of an outlier just because they have SGA, the MVP of the league, potentially. But other than that, I mean, I'm just trying to think. I think Houston's a great example. Like, who is the star on Houston, right?
Right.
You can make the case it's somebody different every night. Now, for the Cavs, I think you could say there's 3 or 4 guys that could be the best player any given night. For the Pacers, I'd say for the most part, it's usually 2 guys between Halliburton and Siakam, but they just have the right role players around them that step up and do what they need to do. So, I don't necessarily think there's a one way that you have to build a team. Right? I think there's so many ways we can do it, but I think the easy narrative to talk about and analysis is, well, do they have a top 5, top 10 guy? Well, they can't win a championship unless they have one of those.
Right.
Where I just don't agree with that. I think that if the Cavs can have, 4 top 30, 35 guys on their team, why can't they? That's a really deep starting 5. And then you talk about their bench, sure, they might not have, 10 guys in the top 100, but still they got a lot of quality players. And I think sometimes you can see where the rotations do shrink. But even the Knicks, like, they're a really, top heavy team, but we saw how it happened last year in the playoffs. Overload of minutes, guys start getting hurt, and people want to say, well, maybe it's not the minutes. It's just an unlucky thing. Well, a lot of these other teams that have depth weren't having the same problems. So I just think that with the Cavs and the Pacers, they're 2 smaller markets, and they've gone about getting guys that are probably in that B-level superstar tier. But when you have a handful of them, I think it makes it easier to go out there and compete at the highest level.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We're very, very on the same plane on this, because I think the two biggest inefficiencies in NBA are roster length, like I said, and health. And you saw last year might have been the biggest example, but it's been happening for several years where a lot of teams fall apart health-wise in the playoffs when the intensity goes up and the guys are just worn down from the season. The game is so athletic and just crazy nowadays. It's so easy. It feels like it's so easy for a guy to get injured, turn an ankle, and be hobbled or compromised for the playoffs. That's it's one of the biggest things that we've debated and I'm interested in with the Cavs is how do they adjust their rotation in the playoffs? Because right now, Mitchell leads the team with 31 minutes per game. They like Garland and Mobley are 30. Everyone else is under 30 minutes a game. For reference, the Knicks have 5 guys over 35 minutes a game. So I'd be interested, I guess, and I'll get you out of here on this. Like, how do you think? I kind of look at where the Pacers' rotations are. As far as that goes, how do you think they would do their rotations? Who do you think maybe are they going to just stay with the top 8? Is there some kind of wrinkle that you would expect them in the playoffs, or specifically against the Cavs? Either way.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would expect in round 1 is them to kind of play a 10-man rotation like they did last year, and kind of just see how it goes.
Yeah,
Thomas Bryant would be my 10th guy probably, and then whoever they decide to play between Ben Shepherd, who had a lot of experience last year and had a pretty good playoff last year, and then Jarris Walker has been coming on as of late, as that 9th guy. But then Toppin, Mathurin, and McConnell are your top 3 off the bench. I mean, I think if you include your starters with McConnell, Toppin, and Mathurin, that's your top 8. And once it gets to that Cavs series, you probably dwindle it down to about 8 guys, just because that's who you probably trust the most. And we just did a bench power rankings trust thing on our podcast a couple of days ago, and Ben Mathurin was number 1 just because of his, ability to guard different players, and just, shot creation is huge and things like that. And I do worry about McConnell at some points just because he's not a great 3-point shooter. He can really impact the game when he's got the ball in his hands, but at times, like, is he going to be played out of a series because of his lack of shooting and things like that? But every time you count McConnell out, he always comes back with a vengeance and just proves why he belongs in the rotation. And then Obi Toppin, I mean, I can't say enough great things about Obi. He really, having an up and down year. I think a lot of noise about, hey, this is a guy that could be traded at the deadline. Pacers are in a tough spot. They might want to make a move. They might want to save some money to keep Miles Turner, whatever. And so they probably were just like, you know what, let's look and see what potentially we could give for Obi Toppin. And so I'm not sure, but it just seemed like mentally he was not all the way there. But once the trade deadline passed, he was kind of put back into a different role, and they've adjusted his minutes a little bit more. Instead of just directly backing up Pascal Siakam, they're using him now more as the small ball 5, and he has really hurt some teams with that. The Pacers completely surprised the Kings by playing Obi Toppin against Domantas Sabonis, and he was locking them up on defense, and then he was killing them on the outside shooting threes. So it's just one of those things when you have a guy that can shoot the ball as well as Toppin can, and when the Pacers love to play fast, nobody runs faster on a fast break than Obi Toppin, because he's going to throw the ball down if Tyrese Haliburton gets his hands on it. So he can change his series quick, and I think that would be one of the most interesting wrinkles of this Pacers team is just the way he's kind of evolved as their small ball 5, which he did a little last year, but more so this year. So I like their bench. I'm sorry I'm rambling here. I give long-winded.
Oh, you're okay.
But I would say come against the Cavaliers, I would expect 8 with the potential of 9 only if they get in foul trouble.
Yeah. Obi Toppin is definitely getting that get away from Coach Tibbs bump with the Pacers. I have noticed he's played really, really well. It's kind of like him. All right. Well, Alex, thank you so much. I'm going to one last I guess 2-word question or 2-word answer to a question.
Yeah.
I truly give you a chance to ingratiate. You've already half ingratiated yourselves to Cavs fans by talking up Evan Mobley. Who do you think should be 6th man of the year this year?
I honestly don't feel like I'm going to give a good answer. I don't know. I don't know.
No, we're campaigning for Ty Jerome right now because we feel pretty strongly that basically the gist of it is Ty Jerome has the best per 36 numbers by far of any bench player. He just plays a little bit less because he plays 20 minutes a game instead of Peyton Pritchard and Malik Beasley. They play like 26, 27, so the counting stats are a little bit higher. So it's just been our campaign. Like trying to stick up for our boy Ty.
Yeah, and I mean, he's definitely deserving to be in the running, right? I mean, I heard Bill Simmons' podcast. They were doing their award, basically just like it doesn't matter awards or whatever they called it. And I had Obi Toppin in the mix, and I'm like, I don't know about Obi Toppin being in the mix right now. He's had a good couple of months, but I don't feel like for the whole year he should be 6th man of the year.
Yeah.
No, I think Ty Jerome's right there, and I think Beasley's the other guy that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
He's been shooting the ball incredibly well for the Pistons, and I can't say enough great things about what he's done. But I'm kind of hoping the Pacers somehow play the Pistons in round 1, because if they were to sweep the Pistons, listen to this. That means that Malik Beasley would have gone 8-3 against the Pacers, or 3-8 against the Pacers last year, and 1-7 against the Pacers this year. So he would be 4-15 against the Pacers in 2 seasons, and that would just make me happy. That's just a crazy stat. But I don't think it's going to happen. I was just hoping for that. I was hoping Detroit would do something. They wouldn't blow games, but they haven't beat anybody besides you guys in that one game since March. They've been playing bad. So they're kind of stumbling to the playoffs, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. If I were you, I don't know who I would rather face out of Milwaukee and Detroit, to be honest.
I'm telling you. The team that doesn't have Giannis and their second best player is Malik Beasley.
No.
You know what I mean? Dame with the injury does make a little bit of.
It makes a huge difference because they're not a deep team at all. So,
and then if he tries to come back while he's injured,
yeah.
Now how much of a damper does that put on what the Bucks are trying to do? But when you look across the court and all you have to worry about is Cade Cunningham and maybe Beef Stew trying to start a fight,
oh yeah, God.
That to me is a little bit more exciting. You're licking your chops a little bit if you see that versus, we got Giannis staring at us. Guy that has his career high and is against us too. So that's all I'm saying.
No, I mean that's fair. I'm a big. I don't think that Milwaukee team has enough, but you're right. Giannis is scary. Frankly, as anybody, I think two-way player. I still think he's the scariest player in the league, even if SGA and Jokic are favored for the MVP this year, rightfully so. But with that, we'll get out of here. Alex, thank you so much for coming on. If the Pacers and Cavs do match up in the playoffs, we will do this again. Happy to do it on your feed next time. But good luck. Not good luck the rest of the season because since we played 2 or 3 times, but we certainly wish you good luck in the first round of the playoffs. And thanks again for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, Kevin. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all so much for listening. And as always, go Cavs.